This is a photograph of a vintage car that I found on the internet. And what I've done is bring it in, place it into a Photoshop file so that it's the background, and then I've just added a title over the top so that I don't forget what it is. We're going to use smart objects to add some wheels to this car that have a certain amount of detail so that we can see them rotating. And then we're going to bring the car forward in a kind of fake perspective view with the wheels rotating. So in other words, the car is going to have rotating wheels, and it's going to have movement and scaling happening all at the same time on the wheels and the body of the car. Let's see how this is done. First, we've got to isolate the car from its background. We're not going to be able to do this immediately because you'll notice that the word background here is in italics, which means that it's locked. I'm not going to be able to do any editing on this. First thing we do, very simple, double click on the background and I'll just accept layer 0. Okay. Now we go from wherever we were, I was in the Move tool, into Quick Selection tool, and the key shortcut for this is W. If you don't see the icon here, click on it and hold, and you want this one here, the paintbrush with the dotted area. To cycle through things with key shortcuts, hold down the Shift key and just keep hitting W. And that will take you through the options for that particular key shortcut. Right, so now we've got a brush, and we just click somewhere in the car. It will select all the parts of the car that are within a certain tolerance of that particular piece. And we'll just drag over here. I'm not going to make it absolutely perfect. I just want a quick selection, because I'm going to be refining it later. So there we are. That's not perfect. You can see it's not perfect up here, but that's fine. Now I go back to the Move tool. So now we've got our rough selection. I'm going to increase the size of this image on the screen because I'm not taking advantage of all the available area. Easiest way to do this is to hold down Control and hit 0 above the letter keys. This will expand the image to fill the available area. Okay, let's zoom in a bit more. Control and the plus key. You can see that we've got a little bit of work to do on the roofline here, on the hood, around the front, the radiator, both adding area and taking area away. What I'm going to do is, in fact, hit the Q key. And what the Q key does is to essentially, and this is showing my age, I know, this is actually to basically give you a rubylith overlay so that you can refine this red area to precisely communicate, to precisely record the selection. So now when I hit B for brush, I'm adding to the selection. I'm going to hit Q again, and you can see I've added to the selection. If I hit E to subtract, I'm taking away from the selection. And again, you can see I've taken away from the selection here. This is how we can do it. So I'll erase this. I'll hit B and add this into my selection by just scribbling over it. Then I'm going to maybe increase the size of the brush with the right square bracket key so that I've got a bit more radius here. Oh, I'm in the brush. That was wrong. So Control Z, E, and again this right square bracket key. Okay, and now I'm refining the selection here. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty good. Since this car is actually going to be quite small in the finished animation, I'm not really worried too much about it being absolutely perfect. Holding down the space bar allows you to move the image in the screen. There we go. That looks good. That looks good, or good enough anyway. But there's still this area here. I'm going to hit B. But with this size of brush, indeed any size of brush, I'm not going to be able to get into the corner here. Doesn't matter. Let's hit B. Paint. Let's hit E for erase. And now we can make it just as sharp and precise as we want. Again, B. Let's refine that. And using the spacebar, holding the spacebar down, I'm just going to go over this. Is this what I want? I'm going to say maybe a bit more here. And then I'm going to hit Q. And that's my selection. Yeah, maybe I could make it a bit bigger there. Q, E. Just refine that slightly. If I want a straight line, incidentally, using either the brush or the eraser, I click, and then holding down the Shift key, I click again, and that draws a straight line between the two clicks. Let's do that up here. We'll make the eraser a bit smaller. Once, holding down Shift, twice. Easy as that. Control Z, Control Z. Then I'll hit Q again, and I'm going to say that is probably good. So now we're good, and we can just hit delete, can't we? Uh-oh, no we can't. We actually want to delete the background, not the car. So we need to invert the selection. Let's go up to the select drop-down menu to find it. It is Shift Control I. Now we can see a second line of marching ants on the bottom edge of the image. If we hit Control minus to zoom out, yeah, we can see there is the entire image selected and a second selection on the inside. All right, let's hit delete now. Perfect. I'm going to save this. File, save as. Let's save it as Berlinetta _2. Now I'm going to hit Control D and then M for a marquee selection. Select the car. V, go back to the move tool, just move it down 1 pixel, and you can see that the selection now limits itself to the car. The other way to do it is to hold down Control and just click here on layer 1. That does the same thing, but it's useful to have 2 ways to do things in some cases. Now we have the car selected. I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to close this file, make a new file, clipboard size, it automatically resizes to the image in the clipboard, create, Control V, paste. And now we've got the Berlinetta isolated on its own layer. And you notice it's actually larger than the car, so probably when I was demonstrating earlier I left a few pixels selected at the top. Doesn't matter. Let's click on the background and delete it. I'm going to hit C for crop and just pull this down, maybe create a little bit of space around the car here. We don't want it too much empty space. Enter. There we go. And now I'm going to save it as Berlinetta Alpha. Save. Okay, so we're done with the car. I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to hit Control O for open, and I'm going to open this tire that I also downloaded from the internet. And you can see this has details, which means that it'll be easy to see how it rotates. I'm not going to open the JPEG because then we'd have to go through isolating the background as we did before. I'm just going to open what I did earlier, which is the tire isolated against a transparent background. and it's a low profile Photoshop PSD. This is what I found on the internet with the background removed. It's looking pretty good, but you can see that here the amount of the canvas surrounding the image isn't consistent in all directions. So using the crop tool, which is C, I'm just going to make it approximately the same all the way around. There are more accurate ways of doing this, but for what we're trying to achieve, I think this is probably going to do. So now we've got about the same number, about 2 of these small squares all the way around in each direction. And I think that's good, so I'll just hit return. Now I'll save that. File, save as, and it's low profile tire, PSD, save, OK, yes, we want to replace it. Now I've got a few things to do. First, I'm going to just change the name here from layer 0 to tire, and I'm going to spell it with a Y because I'm from the UK, and TIRE just looks wrong. And then I'm going to change the screen layout from what I have here, which is my Camtasia layout, with all the important panels on this one screen, and go to motion. Now we get the timeline along the bottom, and if incidentally your image is now not completely centered in here, again just hit Control and 0 and that will expand it to fill the space available. We want to create a video timeline, and that's going to come in at the default of 5 seconds. How many times do we want this tire to rotate in 5 seconds? Well, I don't know, let's just say 5 times to make it easy. We need to have it rotating 5 times, once each second for these 5 seconds. Let's have a look at this particular layer. What we've got when we expand it by clicking on this little arrow is the option to animate the position, the opacity, and the style, not rotation. So this isn't good. The way we can rotate it is to right-click up here and convert it to a smart object, which means that we get this little icon, smart object thumbnail, in the lower right corner of the icon for the layer. Now when we expand this layer, we've got transform instead of position. Transform, remember, means being able to change the scale and the rotation as well as the position over time. And I'm just going to click here, transform. So we've got an icon immediately at this point, at the 0 point. And if it isn't at the 0 point, just click on it and drag it to 0 seconds. Let's go up to 15 frames. This is a 30 frame a second animation. So here I want to go up to the point where this number here says 15. And if we can't do it accurately enough, we can click and drag on this little box down here to change the position of the playhead. Quite useful. There we are, 15 seconds. Control T. We want it to rotate clockwise. I'm going to click and drag when the arrowhead is this double arrow. Rotate 90 degrees, 180, and if I hold down the Shift key, it'll snap to exactly 180 degrees, and then I just hit enter. And we get a new icon. And we got this guy rotating 180 degrees. Let's go up to the 1 second mark. There it is. Again, Control T, holding down the Shift key this time from the start, and you can see this jumps by 15-degree increments. Again, bring it round to 180 degrees, and you'll notice it actually says 0 degrees. Just ignore that, hit enter. Now let's have a look at how this plays. Yes, it's still going in the same direction. That's good. We have our complete rotation in 1 second. All we need to do now is just to copy and paste this. So I'm going to go up to 1.5 seconds, 1:15. Select the last two keyframes, right click on one of them, copy, right click on one of them again, doesn't matter which one, paste. Now we've got 2 seconds worth of rotation. Let's go up to 2.5 seconds. Right click on any of the selected keyframes, paste. 3.5 seconds. Right click, paste. 4.5 seconds. Right click, again, doesn't matter which one, paste. And let's go back to the beginning and hit the space bar to play. Right, so now, with any luck, we've got this guy the same at the end as it was at the beginning. Let's just check that. Here's the name of the tire, Bridgestone, and it's at approximately the 11 o'clock position. Let's go back to the beginning. Bridgestone, approximately the 11 o'clock position. Okay, it's going to be small. If we want it to be absolutely accurate, we might need to adjust the length of this slightly, but as it is, I think we're good. So I'm going to hit File, Save. And now it's got the animation saved with the Photoshop file. Now I've opened the car file again, and I'm going to hit Control 0, just to bring it into the frame a little better, and create a video timeline down here. Click. It's come in at the default 5 seconds. I'm going to click and drag on the end of the layer here and bring it out to about 20 seconds. There we go, 20.0, perfect. And we'll just call this car. Good. Next I want to bring in the wheel. We don't want to import it and paste it. We want to go to Place Embedded, and that makes it come in as a smart object. So we're bringing a smart object in as another smart object, and you'll see the reason for this in a moment. What's it going to be? It's going to be low profile tire. There it is, and I'll just hit enter. 5 seconds long. Let's just hit the space bar, make sure it's rotating as it should, and it is. Right, copy and paste, or rather just drag down to the new layer here. These are all separate layers. I want them to be a layer group, so I'm going to drag this down so that it's next to the first low profile tire file, and now it turns into a video group. Both of these layers are inside video group 1, which we'll call wheel. And now within the group, I'll copy these 2 more times, and you notice they're copied within the group at this point. Right, now I'm going to expand the layer, enable transform, hit Control T with all of these selected, bring them in to a smaller size, move them, resize them, and then holding down the Shift key, I'm going to reduce the scale horizontally so they match the perspective of the vehicle, and then hit enter. Now when I hit the space bar, okay, not quite perfect, but then this is very low resolution, but you can see that the spin is continuing throughout the animation. And when we come to the end of the first one, then guess what? It seamlessly continues to rotate. And as I say, this is very low resolution, so that's the reason for it jumping a few pixels between the repeats. It'll be fine when we have it in the smaller size. Alright, we've got this as fully rotating. We've got the car layer with it. I'm going to save this now, Berlinetta Alpha PSD, and close it. and make a new file. New file, what's it going to be? Well, let's make it 800 by 200. Create. That looks a little small, so I'll just hit C again and expand it so that it's a bit better proportioned. Okay, enter. File, place embedded. Place embedded Berlinetta Alpha. There it is. You can see it's fairly small. Let's just hit return, create a video timeline, go to the move tool to get rid of the crop bars, and hit spacebar. There we go. Again, low resolution, but we can see the wheel rotating, I think. Okay, let's just move this to one side, pull it back, Berlinetta Alpha, transform because it's a smart object. Go over here to the 22nd point, Control T, make it bigger, and enter. Alright, let's see what that does for us. And you can see it's actually playing quite slowly. It's not playing in real time. This is because it's got a lot of calculation to do. But what we've got is the car and the wheel scaling, moving, and the tire rotating all as one piece. Now we can draw our background and we can start to produce our scene.